You are listening to the Digital Parent Podcast with your host, Ced Lewis.
Hey parents, welcome to another episode of the Digital Parent Podcast. How many of you parents have to listen to your kids tell you all the time about how they have the ability to delete all of their messages on their cell phones and how they have Snapchat and all their messages self-destruct? Well, if your child is under the impression that they know how to delete data and protect their privacy, then this show is going to destroy that myth. On this episode, I have internet safety expert Richard Guerry from iRock2 to discuss how everything you do online is public and permanent. But before we get into the interview, a quick word from our sponsor, mSpy. Parents, mSpy is the ultimate monitoring tool for all devices. mSpy remotely tracks GPS locations, calls, text, messages, WhatsApp, Snapchat, web browsers, pictures, and much more. With mSpy, you can also restrict unwanted calls, block websites, or even block apps. Go to mspy.com for more information. Hey, Richard, welcome to the Digital Parent Podcast show, and we're so happy to have you on our show today.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Richard, we want to jump right into it. We want to talk about your outstanding book, Public and Permanent, and how you really teach digital citizenship to kids and their parents. Can you talk a little bit about your book and how you started the book and the concept of the book?
Absolutely. If you'll indulge me. So I actually started out as an interactive marketer back many, many years ago. And in 2009, I was asked to go into a middle school in South Jersey and speak about a word called sexting, which at the time I had absolutely no idea what that was. None. I thought it was actually a prank call. But it was a school nurse who sounded very sincere, and they were having a health and wellness fair. And as I did a quick Google search while she was on the phone, I saw that this was actually a real thing. And so, first of all, I was astonished. And second of all, I said, I've never done what you're asking me to do before, but your school is a few minutes from my home, and I do know a little bit about technology. My background is in interactive marketing, so I'd be happy to come in and talk to your students and your parents and your teachers about technology. I said, but as long as you understand, I've never done that before, and I've never heard of the word you just said. And so I went into the school completely unbiased, completely, I don't want to say ignorant, but naive to what sexting was and what they were really facing. And I just went in with a clean slate, trying to help everyone in that room understand how technology works fundamentally, and why, if we use it the right way, there's a lot of pros, and if you use it the wrong way, like any other tool, there are consequences. And when I left that school and I realized how little everyone in that room, or most of the people in that room, really truly knew about technology, I was quite petrified. So I started doing research. What is out there for parents and teachers and children? Because we're passing out these extremely powerful tools, and it seemed that we weren't really giving any uniform guideline on how to use it responsibly. We were just waiting for people to get in trouble, then slapping a label like sexting on it, and then having an assembly about it. I'm like, we don't do this offline, right? We don't pass out matches to everybody on the planet, wait for them the house of the school to burn down, and then bring everybody in for a fire safety workshop or assembly. But it seemed to me, again, just coming from the outside, looking in, that's exactly what we did with technology. So I started researching, and I found a lot of great information, but it all seemed to be reactionary. And my mindset with technology has always been, we use this, or I used it as an entrepreneur and a marketer to make things public and permanent. I used that guideline in my own life and my own business to show the world maybe a product for a client, or I used it to save a image or a moment with my family. So public and permanent is always a mindset that I had applied to my own use of technology to help expand opportunity. And I also understood that if you were going to put something on a device that you used every day socially for sharing and saving, you probably want to be okay if it becomes public and permanent, because it's very easy for that to happen. That was the whole point of technology, and so, at least socially. And so after a week of really doing research and not sleeping and worrying, having literally anxiety about what was going on in society, and as we were massively distributing technology, I decided I need to do something different in my life. And so I stopped completely with the corporate world, had a very serious conversation with my wife and my family, and decided to make a huge lifestyle change and start a nonprofit called the Institute for Responsible Online and Cell Phone Communication. That's a huge word. We just go by iRock.
Right,
it's iRock
right.
2. Yeah, iRock 2. The 2 is silent. But that is what started me speaking. And from speaking to students in schools, and if you looked at our calendar online, you can see it started in 2009.
Richard, hold on for 1 second, because I don't want to gloss over this. Because you just said
Sure.
you left a corporate job making big time money and big checks to not making no money in the nonprofit
Zero.
world to speak to kids and family on a full-time basis. Wow.
Correct.
I mean, that's huge.
I didn't earn a paycheck for almost 2 years. And I still don't make in 2 years what I used to make in a month. But to be honest with you, it was an epiphany. It was one of those things where you wake up one morning and you just realize there are more important things than money, I guess. I don't know. This wasn't something that affected my children because my son at the time, he was only 5 and my daughter was 2. So this wasn't something that, I didn't change my life for my own family directly. Certainly is in the back of my mind that my kids would eventually grow up. But this was just about, imagine, and this is really what went through my head, and this is why I use fire in a lot of my speaking engagements. Imagine if we gave every human on this planet a book of matches and we didn't teach one soul fire safety. What would it look like outside? What would it look like on the news? That would affect everybody on this planet directly and indirectly. And I basically saw that. I saw we passed out the 21st Century Flame, digital tools, and we were handing these extremely powerful tools to everyone on the planet, kids so young. And we weren't really given a uniform guideline. We were just kind of waiting for people to get in trouble and then coming in and talking about it. And I just didn't think that was fair. I mean, I hear a lot of parents today say, or even back over the last 8 years say, man, thank God technology wasn't around when I was growing up. But the reality for our youth is they are growing up with it, and we've given it to them. So we have to give them wisdom if we're going to hand them a tool that allows them to change everything in less than a second. And so that's why I did it.
So how do you talk to that parent that's in your workshop and their kid is very tech savvy, but the parent has no idea about tech, has no idea about, apps on phones, and just has that fear of checking the phone? How do you get them over that fear to let them know that it's okay and that, for them to take that challenge of looking at what their children are doing online?
Yeah, it's a great question. I get it all the time. So one of the things I ask a lot of parents is, and especially of middle school and younger, but even high school too, I'll say, listen, if you were walking through your home and you smelled smoke coming under the door, cigarette smoke, or you had a suspicion of drugs, would you open the door? And most of them say yeah, or at least knock on the door. Most of them say yeah. And I say, well, listen, if you caught your child doing something in your home, it stays between you and your child in your home. But if you don't have the ability to monitor or at least have open communication with your child when they're using a tool that you're usually giving them and paying for, if you don't have the ability to discuss with them what they're doing on that tool, to have conversations with them about, who are you talking to, or what apps you're using, or what is that for, then we have a serious problem. Because if they do something digitally, that's no longer you and your child in your home. That's your child, you, and the planet. And the ramifications of abuse could be exponentially larger than what you might find, they're doing in their bedroom. So what we often say is, look, open communication is key. To empower parents, what we try and help them understand is you don't have to know every app, tool, and website your child is using, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be a new one. And if you continuously try and keep up, you're just going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel like, my child does know more than me, and I'm just going to pray they don't make a mistake. That's not the way to go. What we say is, listen, you don't have to know every app, tool, and website, because that really is impossible. There's always a new one. And until our kids are using them and something happens, most people don't even know about a new app. Usually something has to happen for us to hear about it. But what we do say is, if you're talking with your child continuously before, during, and after you give them that tool, and say, listen, it doesn't matter what app you might be using. You can go back years to MySpace, it could be Facebook, it could be Instagram, it could be Snapchat, it could be Musical.ly, it could be whatever comes tomorrow. It could be a ghost app or a vault that a lot of kids use to try and hide things on their hard drive. What we tell parents is, whether you know what the app does, no matter what the app is, are you explaining to your child that phone, that laptop, that Chromebook, that iPad, that has a hard drive that saves information. It has technology that allows you to share information. And socially, you turn that tool on every day because you want to know something instantly, share something instantly, or save something instantly. Instant knowledge, communication, and permanence. So whatever it is you're downloading to that device, are you okay with what you're about to put on it becoming public and permanent? Because that is why you are socially turning it on. And while not everything you do will be public and permanent, there are infinite ways today and tomorrow that it can be, because every time technology evolves, what does it make it easier for humans to do? Share and communicate faster and easier. That was its point. That's why we love it. It's why we have it. And so what we try and help parents say is, or to their kids is, reinforce the message, are you okay with what you're putting on there being public and permanent? And I often give a visual example. I say, if I put 100 devices on a stage or a table, half of them you know what they are, half of them you have never seen before. And then I flipped a switch and instantly fire came out of all of them. Are you going to have a guideline to apply to those flames on all those tools? Are you going to know playing with fire can burn? Have you taught that to your kid? Are they going to go put their hand over that flame, whether it's a book of matches or something you've never seen before? Chances are they're not going to put their hand over it because you taught them a very simple but important preventative guideline. Playing with fire can burn. And it's kind of the same principle. You don't know all the devices that use fire. You don't know all the devices on that in the digital world, but you don't have to know every device or app. You just have to know the preventative guideline that lowers your risk and keeps you responsible. And if you harness it, sparks opportunity with every digital tool. And that is public and permanent.
So let me ask you a question, Richard. For teenagers and parents who don't believe that this information is permanent, they have the mindset that once I delete it, it's gone, it's off my phone. What is your response to those people who feel that, once you delete things off your devices, you no longer have to worry about it?
Yeah. So unfortunately, what we've got here is a lot of marketing myth and not wisdom being pumped or perpetuated through society. So technologically, what I would advise anyone listening who thinks that when you just hit delete or worse with the ephemeral technologies, things just magically disappear off a hard drive, I would encourage you to go to Google or your favorite website, search engine, and search what happens to a file after I delete it. And what I think a lot of people will be surprised to discover is the file is not actually deleted. It's still sitting there on your hard drive, usually marked as overwrite. But without getting into too much detail, they can read it for themselves. If we just want to look at Snapchat, for instance, Snapchat came out and made billions of dollars with a B because they told people that the picture would disappear after 10 seconds. There's two issues with that. Number one, you can't control human behavior. So there's no way for you to know once you send the snap that somebody isn't capturing it. And sometimes people's response to that will be, yeah, but if they capture it, they're going to send me an alert. But so what? They have it. They can do whatever they want with it. Not to mention, there are many ways to steal a Snapchat without sending the alert. The other thing is the Snapchat itself, and Snapchat has said this in the press, the file is actually still on the hard drive, and there are ways to recover it. And the FTC went after Snapchat pretty hard because there was really no information out there to tell the truth. There was just a lot of myth being perpetuated that picture would disappear. So I guess my point is, one, if you believe that when you delete something, it's really gone, I would suggest that you do a search and search these words. Say, what happens to a file after I delete it? And you will find what really happens and that it's not really gone. And two, can a Snapchat be recovered? And this is not a referendum on Snapchat. I actually use Snapchat and I think it's a great tool, but like any other tool on this planet, we need to use it with wisdom, not myth we got from marketing. We have to use it the right way. And so what I would say is if you're going to use Snapchat like any other tool, make sure what you're doing with it, you'd be okay getting out. You could also Google a term called the snappening. What was the snappening? Hundreds of thousands of Snapchats were stolen. Now, it wasn't through Snapchat, it was through a third-party app, but the point is it was just one in many ways that picture that was supposed to disappear can get out. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. The point of technology was instant knowledge, communication, and sharing and information. So, again, goes back to why not everything will be public and permanent, but there are so many ways, millions of ways, that it can become public and permanent. And it's just becoming easier and easier for that to happen. So I would implore any of your users, whether they're using Snapchat or WhatsApp or whatever comes tomorrow, the next app that says, hey, this is encrypted end-to-end and it never touches a server. And, it's going to disappear in 1 second. My response to that would be, then what's stopping the receiver from putting another cell phone right next to the screen and recording the screen? And in the 1 second it disappeared, that encrypted message that never touched a server and disappeared in 1 second, well, somebody just recorded it on another phone. So who cares what happened on the one device, because now it's sitting on the other device and the sender will have no idea. And again, that's just one in many ways that you can take something from someone without them ever knowing. And unfortunately, people do that. And then the sender realizes the hard way that that content that was supposed to be private and it was supposed to be encrypted and it was supposed to disappear is actually sitting on the web in some not so great places.
Which leads to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is sexting. And I know you talk to schools all across the U.S. How common is sexting in middle school and high school right now?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't have a specific number, but I can tell you just from being in schools every day of my life, it is a major problem for middle school and high school. And that major problem does not apply to demographics or race or sex. In other words, it's equal no matter where I go, whether I am in the middle of a very rural county or I am in Silicon Valley. We see the same issues in every school, in every town. And I think a lot of it stems from the myths that are being perpetuated, again, by some of the apps saying that the content will disappear. So there's a little less hesitancy to put things like that on the device, thinking, nobody's going to see it. I think some of it's just natural human behavior. Back many years ago, it might have been a Polaroid, where a Polaroid doesn't get easily distributed like a photo today. The act of taking a nude photo isn't something new. The problem is the act of taking a nude photo on a device that will instantly connect you to 1 billion people is new. And so we're seeing a bigger issue because there's a mass distribution of these pictures. Whereas, again, many years ago, that wasn't so easy to happen. And I'll go back to the fire analogy I gave. If I gave a book of matches to everybody on this planet, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter your race, your sex. It doesn't matter your age. If you fool around with that book of matches, you're going to get burned. If you use it the right way, make a campfire, you can make some s'mores. It's all in how you use that book of matches. But again, we've kind of passed out the 21st century flame to everybody and forgot to give the guideline. And so we have people all over who are learning the hard way that private photo, you're putting it on a device that really was never intended to be private. This is a question that I ask every audience, and I do about, on average, 215 assemblies a school year. That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
If you think about how many games a baseball player plays in a summer, this is in a school year between late August and late May, because by June everybody's kind of getting out. So it's a condensed period of time, and it also doesn't include weekends and holidays. So the reason I say that is not to talk about myself, or it's just to bring some credibility to what I'm about to say. Because I do see this everywhere, and I go to a lot of different places. So this isn't me reading about it or watching the news. This is being in front of a room of people and hearing it. This is the question I'll ask everybody. The next time you see somebody about to take a picture of themselves or you that could get them or you in a lot of trouble, will you please ask them this question? Say, hey, before you snap that photo, why was the camera invented? What is the fundamental reason that humans take pictures? To make what? And what would you say the primary answer I receive is?
Kids probably say to make a selfie so they can post on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, they'll say that. Some kids will say money. Most kids, when I say why do humans take pictures, to make what? A lot of them will say memories. And I say exactly. The camera was invented for making memories back in the day. You go back to the Polaroids. So then I follow up with this question. And by the way, I'm pointing at a piece of software that allows you to recover content, undelete content when I say this. If the camera was invented for making memories, then why are there so many humans on this planet of all ages taking pictures of things that they don't want remembered on tools specifically designed for remembering? And one kid the other day goes, mic drop.
Right.
I said, your school would be pretty upset with me if I dropped your mic, but I appreciate that you get the point, And that's a very big eye-opening question when I ask people that, because I think it gives them some pause to think, why am I taking pictures on a device that connects me to 1 billion people that I use every day to share and save if I don't want that picture shared or saved? And sometimes you just got to put it in a different perspective.
So, Richard, what do you do for that parent that comes up to you after your presentation and says, you know what, great presentation, but maybe a little bit too late. This is what I have on my daughter's phone. They show you that phone.
Yep.
What do they do at that point when the pictures are already there? There are already those new pictures all over the phone. What would be the next step for that particular parent?
It's great. It's a great question. So number one, that's a point in time where open communication has to happen and complete honesty has to happen, especially if they're a minor, because now they have to understand that depending on where they live, and there are a lot of variables with prosecutors and things of that nature and laws that are still trying to catch up. The first thing is to help them understand that they could be potentially in not only creation but possession of child pornography, and if those images were sent, they could possibly be charged with distribution of child pornography. So what we want them to do is, number one, have open communication. Who have these pictures been sent to? And then I would usually recommend a phone call to whoever the individual is that was in receipt of these photos and helping them understand the seriousness of the situation. The second thing we want to do is our absolute best to find out if those pictures were ever put online, and if so, where, and then contacting those sites to request they are pulled down. One, especially if they're a minor, because that site could be in violation of child pornography laws. You have to have what's called the USC 1822-57 compliance, where you have to have basically janitorial records to show that the person you're showing in an adult situation is over 18. So the sites would have some legal liability there as well. But not all sites operate on a legal framework. So, you have some sites that aren't going to care. And so the last thing that, or not the last thing, the another thing that I would always recommend is we want to set up Google alerts to see if his or her name, because it happens to both sexes, is being indexed by Google, and if so, where, and if they're tied to those photos at all. And then the other thing that I always recommend is to help that individual understand that their life is not over. Is it a bad mistake? Is it a tough lesson to learn? Yes. And will there be some challenges? Yes. But their life is not over. And from that moment, we need to clear the slate, and we need to help them understand that in that moment, they have to start making 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years of amazing decisions online to help build, a positive track record, or start building a positive reputation. And they have to understand that if they continue abusing technology, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of repeated abuse, that could be a serious problem for them in the future. So in that moment, we want them to understand that they're not alone. Their life is not over. But they are going to have to face some challenges, and open communication and honesty is going to have to be at the forefront, because without honesty and open communication, there's no way to start mitigating the damage. And I know, I'm rambling here, but one of the things that I often say to people is, there was a time on this planet that humans didn't know it wasn't healthy to smoke. It took a lot of people to get hurt. My grandfather died of lung cancer. It took a lot of people to get hurt to create statistics about smoking for today's humans to learn from. If you look at athletes today, what are a lot of them learning about from a very young age? Concussions, post-concussion syndrome, CTE. We have ex-NFL players suing the NFL. Why? Because early athletes like Junior Seau paid the price. They created statistics about concussions for the rest of us today to learn from. Where I'm going with this is, that's just the way life goes. The first generation will always pay the price for the next generation. And as the first digital generation, that is unfortunately what we see happening every day. We have the first generation of digital humans creating both statistics of promise and pitfalls for the next generation to learn from. And what I try and help parents understand and students understand is, for parents, their grandchildren, and for students, their children, they are going to be able to make informed decisions about technology. Like today's smoker and today's athlete, they will make informed decisions, but they're going to make those informed decisions based off of our decision making and the information that we're leaving behind. And so what we're trying to do when we stand in front of a room of people is, when we talk about public and permanent, we want them to harness that and use that to become statistics of promise, not statistics of pitfalls. So unfortunately, we are going to have kids out there sexting, and that's going to lead to challenges like sextortion, where they're being exploited. We are going to see this, and it's not that it's never going to go away, but based on the first digital generation's behaviors and activities and abuse of technology, and it's not always an informed abuse. A lot of times it's a blind abuse, because they did truly believe in their heart and in their mind that that photo was going to disappear, or that message was truly encrypted and nobody could see it. The next generation is going to make informed decisions. But unfortunately, we're going to have people that get hurt. But we try and help our audiences understand is you will not be one of those statistics of pitfall if you apply public and permanent.
Do you recommend for those parents who have those pictures on their phone that they get some type of IT specialist to come in and wipe all of that information off the phone so that the child or the parent is not in possession of child pornography?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. The first thing is, you probably want to completely format that phone, because if you wipe it or you format the phone, what you're really trying to do is remove or limit the risk of that content existing on the phone. You don't want to have any chance that if the phone gets lost or stolen or what have you, that there is any chance of recovering that content. To be honest with you, so I have a daughter now. She's only in 3rd grade, so it's hard for me to put myself in the context of a parent who would be dealing with this. Although, sadly, we have seen kids as young as 9, 10, 11 taking nude photos. I would probably just break that phone,
right?
Completely, I would completely destroy it and hope that the lesson learned wasn't as catastrophic as it could be. But that would be what I would do as a parent. I would wipe the phone, reset the phone, and then break it.
Now let's switch quickly, Richard, to cyberbullying, because we know that parents, school systems take bullying very serious, but are they taking cyberbullying very serious? Since it's taking place online, since a lot of times it takes place outside of the school system, are they giving that the same amount of attention that it would give traditional bullying?
I think schools have actually been inundated because of the cyberbullying or cyber cruelty that's taking place outside of the school. I know because I see it every day in different schools that a lot of administration, vice principals, even guidance counselors are having to deal with. I mean, more of their day is dealt with dealing with issues that have taken place online, even over the weekend, than actually being able to teach or better the environment of the school. Schools are now dealing with issues that happen on a Saturday or a Sunday that in the past they wouldn't have had to deal with or wouldn't even have known about. The fight that took place at the park on Saturday or took place after the pickup game of football or basketball on Sunday, well, those fights are now taking place online. And because they're taking place online, it's affecting the students, and therefore it's affecting the school because some of it's spilling over on into that Monday when they get back to school. So schools are dedicating time to it, but they just don't have the manpower. They don't have the manpower to deal with the number of issues that are now falling into their lap that years ago they wouldn't have had to deal with. A fight in a school stays in a school. Fight online, now they're dealing with not only the individuals in the school who might have started it, but all of the comments that might be taking place outside of the school, maybe even by people who don't go to that school. Look at the news, how many times we might see a threat being made against a school. All of a sudden we see an increase in lockdowns. I mean, we see a lot of issues taking place, and a lot of that is born from some of the cruelty that's taking place online. So schools are inundated, I guess is the short answer to your question. They're inundated, and a lot of what they're inundated with is because they are having to deal with so much abuse of technology taking place outside of school, after school, on the weekends that is now spilling into school.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think there's a way for parents to monitor what's happening outside of school, like either through Twitter or Facebook, so they can alert their child the next day? Like, if they're hearing that there's a fight that's getting ready to take place at the school next day, is there a way for us to teach parents of how to search for those things online so they are aware of what may take place?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I encourage parents, and again, the age is going to be different. There's a few variables. I encourage parents to certainly follow the school, follow their children, if possible. Again, depending on the age, are they friends with their kids online? The caveat to that is a lot of kids. I shouldn't say a lot of kids, but there are kids who will create false Instagram accounts or alias accounts where they're having a conversation that they don't want their parents to know about. It's a fake account basically. And so when that happens, it's very difficult to monitor what might be taking place. But if the parents are friends with their kids online, or they have that open communication, and they're checking their child's phone or checking their child's social media site, they might be able to come across something that is taking place that they might not agree with, or they might see a threats being made and have a conversation with their kids. The problem is, a lot of times these threats and these conversations are taking place today in messengers, and so it makes it a lot more difficult because there's not as big a paper trail, or I shouldn't say paper trail, but a digital trail,
right?
Which makes it a little difficult. That's where early on we were talking about empowering parents. Communication comes in. Like one woman, I'll never forget, she gave a great tip. When her daughter was allowed to have Snapchat, she said the rule is, if you have a Snapchat, that's fine, and I trust you, but if you get snaps, I want to be able to open them with you sometimes. And so she'll do that. She'll do that on a weekly basis or what have you. She'll just pick a random time and sit down with her daughter and say, hey, let's check out your snaps. And she'll gauge her daughter's reaction. Is she nervous? Is she okay with it? If she's nervous, why is she nervous? Why is she looking uncomfortable? And that might spark a conversation. I know that's a little off topic with the bullying and the fighting, but what it goes to is parents have to have open communication with their kids. Hey, has anything happened online that's made you feel uncomfortable? Has anybody been cruel to you? Has anybody been making you feel uncomfortable online? These are just questions that you can ask casually and gauge your child's reaction to see, are they being honest with you? Are they truly listening to you? And they'll see that you care. And not that every child's going to be honest, but it opens the door to a conversation. And that's the most important part, because usually what I find is students don't want to go to school in a hostile environment, and they don't want to go to school afraid. But sometimes they don't know who to turn to. So being that teacher or that parent that says, hey, any problems at school, any problems online, anything that's made you feel uncomfortable, anything you think I should see, anything I can help you with, these are conversations that might get them to tell you something and show you something that might help you prevent something.
So one last question, Richard, for the kids, what would be a couple tips that you would give them?
I'll give you quite a few here. First, I'm going to start with cyber cruelty. These are the tips that I give everybody. Number one, I can't, and I always use myself as a frame of reference because I never want it to seem like I'm talking at people. I always try and help people understand that I'm a human being that lives in the same digital world, and we're all essentially neighbors at this point. So the tips I give are, number one, I can't be in the head of the person I'm about to be cruel to. I have no idea what that person's capable of doing to themselves, and I have no idea what they're capable of doing to me. Are they going to show up to work, home, school with a gun? The last thing that anybody needs is to wind up on somebody's list. And unfortunately, you don't have to look hard in the press anymore to see people walking into public places with weapons. And so before I'm cruel online, do I really want to, I don't know what's going through that person's head. Do I really want to put myself out there on a list and make somebody I don't know angry? And what might they be capable of doing? The second thing is, I don't know the friends and family that people are being cruel to. I always ask people, hey, you have a friend or a family member, maybe a crazy Uncle Ed, somebody who's just not all together there, somebody where the holidays are rolling around, you prefer to Skype them than to have them in your home. And say, well, for the same reason we all might have that relative that's a little off, or that friend that's a little off. We don't know the friends and relatives of the people we're being cruel to and what they might be willing to do to us. And then the last thing I try and help people understand is there are billions of people on this planet, and while to our friends and our family, we might be fake, not always, but most of the time, to billions of other people when we're cruel online, we really just look like a jerk, and jerks don't get opportunities. And so those are just a few quick tips as it relates to cyber cruelty that I like to give, and certainly I go into more depth, but in this environment, I'll just give those tips real quick.
And I think those are great because we've all seen situations where kids have been cruel to other kids online, and those kids may have been gang involved or had access to weapons, and people got killed or murdered the following day.
Yeah. Absolutely. I tell a couple of stories in my presentations, true stories that mean, there's a 14-year-old who's no longer with us because he happened to be bullying his ex-girlfriend whose older brother was a gang member. And I also show an individual who, when I talk about jerks don't get opportunities, this kid went on Twitter. He had everything. I mean, he had a full ride to college, play football, and he got on Twitter and he said some horrible stuff. And after all of that work to earn a scholarship, and after all of that work that he put in to achieve that, in 1 second he lost everything because of some cruelty online. What I try and help people understand is, did anybody ever give this kid a guideline to use when he's using technology?
Right.
Did anybody ever say to him, before you type that, are you okay with what you're about to say winding up public and permanent? Because he tried to delete his Twitter account, and he tried to delete all of his tweets. And we see politicians and athletes and celebrities do that all the time. They try and delete the tweet. We all get to see it.
Right.
There's so many ways to pull it back. And I'm not saying it's easy. And in fact, I'm very honest, and I tell people it's not always easy to hold back. But it's really important, when people say stop and think or pause before you think, I agree with that. My difference is, or our difference at IROC is, don't just pause and think. Pause and think, are you okay with that being public and permanent? Because that is exactly what you are about to do, is make that public and permanent. And well, often when we're using this kid who lost his scholarship, we try and help him understand as our audience, if he used public and permanent and put out some awesome tweets and made that work for him, he may have actually gotten a better scholarship. He might have actually opened up opportunities for himself.
Right.
Like there was a kid who's his claim is that he actually got into UCLA because of his behavior on Twitter. He went on Twitter and he wrote, I think it was like the top 50 reasons he wanted to go to UCLA. And somebody there wrote an article on it, loved it, and he attributes that to why he's going to UCLA. But then you see people every day who get on social media, and it doesn't matter the platform. You can go back to MySpace, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever comes tomorrow. And they put things out there. They're not okay being public and permanent. They disregard it. They think it's not going to happen to me. They think it's private. They think only my friends can see. And then they find out the hard way that's not true. And another tip that I always give, and I told you earlier I use fire a lot. I often ask my audiences, how amazing would it be if fire could be hot and cold? I mean, how amazing would that be? And I give them an example. I say, imagine you're babysitting a second grader, and that second grader starts whining. They're hot. They want something cold to drink. And you got a bottle of water, but it's been in your bag all day. It's 95 degrees. What if you could take that bottle of water, hold it over a campfire? You're sitting around a campfire roasting marshmallows. Imagine you could hold that bottle of water over that campfire and it would ice it. Imagine that second grader started running around in the woods, after they ate those s'mores and they're playing tag or flag football, they roll their ankle. But instead of you running through the woods like a nut trying to find an ice pack, what if you could just take the lighter you lit your campfire with, hold it out, say, put your ankle over it, and it would ice it. And a lot of people are like, oh, that'd be awesome. They're like, what? And I think it's crazy. It's a crazy thought. And my response to that is, as crazy it is that a human would think fire could be hot and cold today, there was probably a time when humans didn't know that when they first discovered fire. A lot of people had to get hurt, and we had to learn from the people who got hurt. And people were scared when people get hurt. And I see a lot of parents and teachers who are petrified of technology today because they see so many people getting hurt. But what happened once we applied the preventative guideline of playing with fire can burn and we harnessed fire? It sparked human progress. And what I tell people is public and permanent is the 21st century version of that guideline. If you use it the right way, it will spark human progress. As silly it is for a human to think fire being hot could be hot and cold today, that might not have been so silly when fire was first discovered. And future generations are going to look back on our time, this digital renaissance. They're going to look back on our time as the users of the first technology in the history class, and they're going to be like, can you believe that they used to think the technology, you could have something called social media and something called privacy? And they're going to say those are completely opposite viewpoint things. Social and private are oxymorons. It can't happen. But for some reason, humans believe that it can. And that's why you see so many challenges every day. And just like fire is never going to be hot and cold, please, whoever's listening to this, understand you are never going to have something called social privacy in the digital world because it was never built for that. It's impossible. It's impossible. If you want to teach a kid this, here's the tip, my tip of the day. We do this to elementary kids all the time. Go up to a fourth grader and say, hey, fourth grader, what's the definition of the word social if I'm a social person? Most of them will say, social people are outgoing, they talk a lot, they share a lot. Perfect. Then say, hey, fourth grader, what's the definition of the word private if I'm a private person? Most of them will say, private people keep to themselves, they don't talk a lot, they don't share a lot. Perfect. Then say to them, hey, fourth grader, social people and private people. The definition of the word social and private. They complete opposites. You know what they're going to say to you? Yep. And hit them with this question. then if social and private are complete opposites, if those definitions, those concepts are complete opposites, then why are there so many humans on this planet that expect something called privacy and something called social media? And allow them to put their hand to their head and they're like,
drop the mic.
Exactly. The point is, social media and digital tools were never built for privacy. They were built from the ground up. Their purpose, birth, and structure give humans incredible power. The incredible power, instant knowledge, communication, and permanence. The privacy part, just human greed. It's in our DNA. Just we want it. Give a human an inch, they'll take them out, give them some cake, they want to eat it too. And it's nothing to feel bad about. It's how we're built. Ask a 5-year-old, it's bedtime. What's their first question going to be? 5 more minutes? And what happens when we give a 5-year-old 5 more minutes? They say, 5 more minutes, right? And eventually they're up a half hour. You're like, how are you still up? Because it's just built into humans. But just because we want it doesn't mean we can have it. And again, to make sure that everybody listening understands that social privacy will never happen. Imagine that your fire can be hot and cold. It can't happen because one thing can't do two totally opposite things. Can't happen. Fire can't be hot and cold. Light can't be on and off. Human can't go forward and backward at the same time and survive. And you can't have something called privacy in a world called social media. Those privacy settings, they were mislabeled from day one. That's the problem. They set the wrong expectation for an entire planet of people. That's why you've seen people get in trouble since the days of MySpace. They set the wrong expectation, and so people made blind decisions. They should have called them what they really are, which is transparency settings or visibility settings, because every human on this planet does every day is do their best to limit third-party visibility into their digital lives. Social privacy is completely impossible.
You know what? That's an excellent point. It's not a privacy setting, it's a visibility setting. It allows who you want to look at your site, and that's it.
That's right. We do our best to keep people out, but you can't keep everybody out, and you can't keep everything in. I mean, text the wrong phone number, you get hacked, you attach the wrong file, you send the wrong snap to the wrong person. There are millions of ways for that content to get out. Millions.
So, Richard, how can parents find your information if they want to book you to come out to their school or if they want to find more information? What are your contact information?
Sure. So our direct website at the nonprofit is www.iroc, then the number 2.org, so iroc2.org. You could also find us at publicandpermanent.com, all spelled out. Online, Facebook, it's facebook.com/iroc2.org. We try and post some of our travel adventures on Instagram, so you can learn more about us there as well at Public and Permanent. And the one thing I'll say is we do get annoying with those words, public and permanent. It's our trademark, it's our mantra, and yeah, I literally did write the book on it. But I will say this, that those two words, I know it seems simple, but they are two very simple words that can really open up a world of opportunity for you, or they can close that window of opportunity for you. It really truly is the 21st century version of playing with fire can burn. It is the uniform guideline that anyone operating any digital tool, whether you're holding it in your hand or pretty soon you will be wearing it, please just try and remember those tools connect you to billions of people, and it will save information for you. And if you want to share something amazing in your life, you have that ability to do it instantly. If you want to capture a moment that you want to eventually show your kids and your grandkids, you can do that immediately. But the opposite is true. You put something on that device that you don't want shared or saved or becoming public and permanent, and you can't have it both ways. You can't want that tool to let you share instantly, know something instantly, and save something instantly, but also put something on it that you don't want shared or saved. It can't work both ways. And it was never intended for the latter.
Got it, Richard. Appreciate it, and best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
I hope you guys enjoyed those helpful safety and privacy tips that Richard provided on the show. If you feel the need to audit the content of your child's cell phone, then please go to our homepage and click on the free 7-day M-Spy trial. You will be able to see all the text messages, pictures, videos, mobile app content that your child is downloading. It is a free and easy way to make sure that nothing is public or permanent on their cell phone. As always, please go to iTunes and rate the Digital Parent Podcast. Let us know your thoughts on this episode. Until the next time.